Fabric bowls are not only a fantastic way to burn up your scraps, but they're super fun and easy to make. Now, I've got a couple tricks in my tutorial today to teach you how to use a finished edge and a small stitch to make a really clean looking fabric bowl. Let's get started. As I said, you can certainly burn up your scraps using this, but I want to show off one of my favorite pre-cuts here, the Color Strata roll. This is solid Cotton Couture from Michael Miller. And this bowl here you're looking at is actually consumed half of an entire pre-cut roll there. Now, as I teach you today, keep in mind, you can always add in more cording or more fabric to make your bowl get bigger and bigger and bigger. I want to walk you through some of the basics. And what I did for those basics is I took my roll, I opened it up, I put it in an order of color that I really liked, and then I simply took and I cut the folds out of all of my fabrics so that I started working with what would be about a 22 by 2.5 inch strip. Now, one of the things I wanted to do was make a continual set, like I would with my binding, right, of the fabric to wrap around the cord so that I wasn't adding a piece to this set to keep no raw edges. It can be a little cumbersome, so having a nice piece of Velcro to wrap around to hold it in place like this is going to be very handy for you. You'll need a couple because we're going to do the same with our cording. But we're going to build this by taking a bias join. Again, we don't want this to get bulky. And if you're not much of a quilter yet in your life, I'm going to teach you how to do this bias. It's real simple. You're going to take your right sides of your fabric and you're going to set them together. We're using solid, so I've got the first two perfect, don't I? Now, from there, I'm just going to stitch a line across here. So it lays like this, and then I'm going to stitch a line across here, and that will form a bias union. And then I just join all of my little 22-inch pieces all the way down until I have a wonderful color order. Now, management is the key to the fabric bowl, the way I'm going to teach you. And so what I really want to show you in this bowl, look carefully, we're going to go from blue at the beginning, and we're going to come all the way through to the pink and then back out to the blue. So I actually took one rotation and another rotation of color, and you can see that I've made them. We're going to start with our blue, go into our pink. Once we get down to the pink, we can splice on this new tail and keep going. The reason I did that is these are easier to keep in my hand while I'm wrapping the cording. If you have a big bulky one, it just becomes a bit cumbersome, and it's the wrapping that becomes time consuming, and so I want to make it as efficient as possible. So I'm going to put this on later onto this as we build the bowl. So that's just the bulk management. And then also with our cording here, I've got about 10 yards of cording. I won't use that much, but I could, right? And I also have it trapped and wrapped in the Velcro. And while I'm working on this, this actually is kind of sitting below the table, and as I create twist in my cord, I can see this spinning below me. The weight of that spins below and helps keep the cord from twisting up, because that is one of our adversaries today. We do not want our cord to get too twisted. So I'm going to take a couple of more folds into here real quick, just so I'm nice and ready to go. And I don't believe I told you, but this was at 2.5. It's been pressed so that the right sides would be facing out on both sides. Now, to start, you want to have a nice clean cut, and I'm not using the laundry cord. I find that's a very dense cording and it works wonderful, but because I wanted to use a little bit thicker cord, I went with a cotton covered, or excuse me, it's like a poly wrap on a cotton. You'd use it in piping and pillows. It's very soft, it's very squishy, and very, very easy to stitch through, and that's one of the reasons I made that choice. So when I'm dealing with getting ready for my wrap, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that clean cut and I'm going to set it inside of my finished part, fold it over, and I'm going to pinch real quick. Now, before I go any further, I want to make sure I have a couple of my little wonder clips handy, because as I start to come around the top, I'm going to get about 2 twists in here. And the first few inches, yes, I am twisting up the cord as well, because it's very easy to untwist. You can actually starting to see that happen there. Now I'm going to let the cord hang off of the table. I find it's actually easiest to sit while you do this, so I'm going to do the same. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to twist, and then I feed my pile of fabric as I go. See how easy that works? And what this does is it keeps all of our fabric tail and our cording from getting double twisted around down at our feet. what I'd like to do is go ahead and wrap this until I've maybe made it through 2 or 3 color changes. So about 40 inches of fabric, it'll equal about 12 inches of wrap. And then I'll show you how to start your coil and begin doing your bowl. And reminder, as I'm working on this a little bit, this technique is awesome for rugs, it's awesome for placemats, trivets, anything like that. It doesn't have to curl up. We can do these nice and flat as well. And I think I stalled just long enough to show you my next trick. So I'm going to put another Wonder Clip here to hold it so that I can undo my Velcro, and I'm going to let out to the next color. There's the next color starting. The smaller fabric tail, the easier it is to manage. Okay, then I take the Wonder Clip back off, and as I'm wrapping my cording, I'm not wrapping it super tight. And the reason I don't wrap it super tight is after a few hours of doing this, you might find that your fingers get a little tired. Not to discourage you from doing a good job, but what I'm trying to say is if you wrap it super tight from the beginning, you're going to want to keep wrapping it super tight at the end. And your hands may be a little tuckered out on your first bowl. So don't wrap it super tight so that you can just have a nice, easy start and finish as you go. All right, as we get this last little wrap around here, I'm going to go ahead and pinch this off. Hold that there. Now, we're going to need a few of our little straight pins. And what we're going to do, we can take the end clamp off. It's not going to get away from us. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start to coil this into a little ball pretty tight in the coil. And I have those pins handy because in a few seconds it's going to feel like I just can't hold on to it much longer. And so in order to secure it, I want to go ahead and put a pin or 4 through as many of the coil as I can. Be careful not to let that come through and hit you in the finger or thumb on the other side. But this is going to help us secure it until we get over to the sewing machine. Okay, so now we are ready to approach the sewing machine with our coil. One of the things I've also learned to do at this point is I need to get myself a little bit more working room here. So I'm going to go ahead and re-wrap my fabric one more time. Got my cord, and now we're going to move over to the machine. Now, I'm hoping that you have a stiletto handy because it might help on these first few stitches. And at this point, you can also bring the weight of your cord onto the table again as well. I want you to make sure that your cording is coming off the right side of the bowl. That way the coil itself will start to build on the left side. Eventually, this bowl is going to end up building like this. And so we can't not fit it usually under the machine this side. So I want you to build it up this way. And the trick is having the cording come off of your right hand. We're going to get deep into the middle. Some machines have a presser foot extra lift, so I'm actually pushing up higher on there. We're going to have to get a little Western with this every now and again. And see, I've got it basically really thick, and I did that on purpose. What I want to teach you to do is we can squish this down as a trick, or some machines, if you can get them in the cycle where the feed dogs go down enough, then we can start to slide it in, get it there, and bring it right up and sneak it underneath there. Okay, be careful not to push on your needle too hard. And this is the most difficult part of the entire project, the first few minutes of sewing. Once we get around this little coil, it is super easy and fun, and you can just sit at your machine and enjoy doing a little wrapping, a little stitching, a little wrapping, a little stitching. But these first few moments, deep breath, stiletto in hand. I'm going to be able to use my stiletto in here almost like a steering wheel because it's such a small amount of area I'm working in. Okay, here we go. If you have needle down on your machine, engage needle down, polyester thread, and a 4mm zigzag with about a 2mm stitch length is what I'm using today. And you can see I'm using that stiletto to just coil around that center. Oop, and I just hit that pin. So let's make sure I come up nice. Okay, we're good. Like I said, we're going to take these first few laps really slow. Okay. And then at a point like this, we might need to take and feed the body of our coil back around. Okay. And then we're down here. This is going very nicely here. Coming around. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch till I've got a couple of inches worth of that fabric tail on the table for me. As I come around my coil here, I'll cut my threads out of the way later. And this is going to be a great place to stop here in just a second. Let's just get past this other pin. Perfect. Okay, easy. Now let's get these pins out of the way for the rest of the day. We don't need them any longer. This is going terrific. And now what we're going to do is we're going to let the cord go back down and just hang off of the table. It's not touching the ground. We want that so that it spins. And then I'm going to take off my Wonder Clip, keep it handy, and I'm going to start to wrap and loop my fabric over. Wrap and loop my fabric over. Now, earlier I mentioned that I cut my strips into 22-inch strips, and the reason we do that is just so that the colors change faster in the bowl. You could certainly use 44-inch strips, and again, like I said, these were traditionally done with all kinds of scraps. What I think is important is that we do join those on the bias so that they don't get too lumpy as we're working. Okay, and I'm just going to do a little bit of this because I have another bowl that's almost finished, and I'm going to be able to show you how it's finished here in just a second. But I want to teach you how we wrap at the machine now. It's a little more cumbersome, and I just do one wrap at a time. And again, I'll go out about 6, 8, 10 inches. You'll find where it's comfortable for you, and you'll probably find that after you do it a little bit longer, you're able to run your cording out a little further and be able to control it nice. So I've gotten this wrapped just enough here, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use one of my Wonder Clips, hold that in place, and then I want to show you what I'm looking at. If you look really close, I'm looking at this gap in the presser foot and the way that the two cords come together. That way I try to keep my two pieces centered, and I'm kind of pulling back on my cord a little bit here. And then the weight of the cording between my legs also helps. Over time, that's going to help us increase our coil. So from here, let me start wrapping while we're talking about this. What we're going to do is we're going to start to build out the center of our bowl because we're making a bowl today. If this was a trivet, we just wouldn't start to make the bowl shape upward. You can do a wide one, you can do a narrow one, a steep bowl, a skinny bowl, whatever you like, but that's all based on how you begin your arcing. So what I'm going to do on this particular one is a really deep dish, a deep bowl. And that starts by going zoom from the coil right into the elevation. I'm going to show that, and then we'll show you how to finish this bad boy off. Because I've made several of these fabric bowls, I did feel comfortable to wind off about another 14, 16 inches worth. And I also wanted to do this so I could hopefully show you the curl starting to form. So as I'm doing this, I'm going to start to put my thumb in the center and pull upward. And I'm actually putting extra pressure out here on my cord hand, because that technically should shorten things up. I'm still watching that gap between, and you can see here how the bowl is already starting to form. I do like using a really narrow zigzag for this, so I do have to be careful to make sure that I land as many stitches as possible. And I like to use a thread that kind of complements, or a variegated thread that will kind of add some fun accent. You most certainly can set this up for a very wide zigzag as well. That helps, but you'll show more of your thread color that way as well. Okay. Okay, so you can now see that the bowl itself has started to form just by starting to slightly pull up on this, and I can make adjustments throughout the bowl as I go. I want to show you how to finish the cording. So I talked earlier about splicing on a new piece. let's say at this point it was time to splice on a new piece. You're simply going to go ahead and raise your needle up, go ahead and slide this out, and you might have even had to set your machine back to straight stitch so you could splice on a piece. That wouldn't be a big problem. You would just sew that on. And when you come back in, just like we're going to do now with this bowl so that I can show you how to finish the edges, you'll simply just set it back up in there and try to line up your actual zigzag stitches. And I like to go back about 1 inch or so. And then from that, we're going to go ahead and come forward. Now, at this point, I have my clips off. I'm going to wrap the rest of my tail. And you don't want the end to turn out too sloppy looking. We do have a raw edge on the very end of our bowl, so we have to deal with that. So when I am about, and let me see, how can I show all of you at home the best? I'm going to rotate the bowl out of the way. So when I'm about, 1.5 inches away from the end, what I want to do now is I want to come in here and I want to cut my cord. So let's put one of these clamps, put our little third fingers in place there. Let's cut this cord out of the way. Okay? Now what that does is it gives us the opportunity to wrap around here once, and then as I come around this raw edge, I can start to fold it under like yay, and now I can catch all of the raw edge, wrap it around, and I'm going to stick another pin through and down into the cord a little ways, and I'm also going to clamp it just for extra security. Now we're going to roll the bowl back into place so I can see what I'm doing. And we're going to just smoothly stitch on this last row. As we go here, nice and smooth. And now at this point, what I want to do is I'm going to use that stiletto again. Let's get our clip out of the way first. And I'm going to try to control and roll that raw edge. Sorry that I've got so much of my big manly fingers in our way here today, but I'm going to roll now that raw edge underneath. As I get closer, I'm going to worry a little bit more. And then as we just come in here very delicately, sometimes pinning, you can see I ended up sliding another pin in that last little tail of the cord to hold it. That stiletto is a great tool. And then just sew off a little bit. Well now, you see, that doesn't take nearly as long as I expected it to. These bowls are fantastic, and I better get started on another project soon. I don't know how much time there is. We'll catch you next time at Man Sewing.